Hey, y'all remember Shonen Showtunes? After a rather long hiatus, we are back with another episode of the Shonen Showtunes Virtual Interview Series with my wonderfully special guest for this episode, Marisa Duran! Since moving to Dallas, Marisa has become such a wonderful friend of mine. We took some classes together when I first moved here, and I'm so excited that I got to talk to her about what we love the most. Before we start, if you are interested in learning a little more about Shonen Showtunes, be sure to check out the links in the description. I've got a wonderful webpage that I made all by myself that has all the info you could ever need. And with that, let's get started. We're gonna begin, a great place to begin, at the beginning. Do you remember the first theatrical production you were ever in?
Oh, the first actual theatrical production?
Yeah, or even the first time your little body graced the stage.
True. Okay. So, so growing up, my parents were always like, what kind of summer camps do you want to do? And we'd look through the Dallas Morning News and look at all the different summer camp options. And we randomly found one for Garland Civic Theater, and they were doing a 2-week variety camp. And it was going to be singing and dancing and other random stuff. So my mom signed me up for it. And I remember we wrote our own little 5-minute scene and then performed it at the end of the camp. And we learned a dance to Twist and Shout. Yes. And probably some other ones, but that's the one that I remember.
Classic, yes.
Exactly. But yeah, we did that. And I don't think any of us expected the theater bug to bite, but it did. Mm-hmm. And so that was right before I started second grade, I think. And I just stopped.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the first show that you auditioned for, actually?
Yes. Okay. So I did a lot of work with this company called Plano Children's Theater, and they've now changed names and are a big company called North Texas Performing Arts. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, they were in this small studio space with the black box theater. And again, my mom, I think, found the audition. And basically you go in and audition, but every kid has a role. Yeah. So they were doing this version of the Princess Diaries, and it was kind of based on the movie, but also super different. And so I played the mean girl. I think her name was Molly.
Okay.
Or something, but she bullied the character of Mia, the mean girl. So I was the mean girl in my first true stage show. But it was super cool because then at the end they it was everyone was supposed to go to this big dance at the end and look pretty, and they got all of our dads to come on stage with us and dance.
Oh my god, that's really cute.
So yeah, that was my first true role, I guess.
Oh heck yeah. Finding out your child type was a bully.
You gotta love it.
So once you got bit by the bug, what was your journey with actual real training and then into college programs and all that? What was your journey in that sense?
Oh yeah. So I kept auditioning for shows. I did a ton of shows at Plano Children's Theater. And that's kind of where I got my basis, I guess. And then starting in 6th grade, when I started middle school, you could choose an elective. And I was like, oh, well, obviously I'm going to do theater. So I started doing that. And then in 7th grade, we had this thing called the theater team, which was basically the equivalent of speech and debate, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But instead of doing the speech and debate part, we just did various theater related activities. There was readers theater or humorous interpretation or dramatic interpretation.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of that stuff. And then in 8th grade, I was voted as our drama club president or whatever.
Yes, let's go.
And then I had done so much theater for so long that I got kind of burned out. And so starting 9th grade, I was like, I'm going to do choir. So I did. I did choir and drill team. And then in the spring of my freshman year, I saw a show at my high school, and it was the first one I had seen there. And it was actually written by our theater teacher. And it completely blew my mind. It was this version of it's called Wonderland. And it's basically what happened before Alice got there. And so it's actually the story of Marianne instead of Alice, and kind of how the Queen of Hearts becomes the Queen of Hearts. And it blew my mind. It was so cool. And I was like, oh no, I think I have to do theater again. So I dropped a cappella choir and chamber singers for sophomore year and did theater instead. And I just never really looked back. And then my parents have always been super supportive. So when I was looking at colleges and what I wanted to do, I was like, I kind of want to pursue acting. And they're like, go for it. And I was like, are you sure? So yeah, I auditioned for 3 different schools and got into 2 of them. And then it was so weird because I was supposed to go to OU for acting, and I had submitted my housing deposit and everything. And my mom and I were actually driving up to Norman, Oklahoma to like go see one of their productions. And then we got a call on the way from the chair of the theater department at TCU. And he was like, hey, we found more money for you. And I was like, yo. And so suddenly my first choice school was actually a possibility. So my mom
Yes.
and I
Oh my
turned
gosh.
around and I never looked back.
Literally physically turned around. You're like, actually,
Literally,
never
we were
mind.
like, wait, we don't need to go anymore then. Okay.
Rewind a little bit to Wonderland. This is I don't think I'm gonna
Yeah,
put this in
yeah.
the video. Is it the musical, like the I'm the man?
No, but
Okay,
that
I
would
was
be
like,
so
wait a
cool.
minute, that like premiered at the Strat Center in Tampa, Florida, where I'm from. That's
Right?
crazy. Okay, I thought it was the same thing. I was like, I'm about to poop my little pants here.
Oh yeah. That Adder song though. Oh man.
It's so good, and
It's
I
so
don't
good.
ever want to sing it because it's so good. Okay, so what was the first professional live performance gig that you ever booked that you actually got paid for?
Ooh, that I actually
Or
got.
like had to sign a contract at least?
That is such a good question. Because the first one, I guess the way I think of it is like my first production with like adults in the adult roles.
Right. That can count.
Does that okay? Because that's
Yeah.
like the first thing that always comes to mind because I was so used to kids playing parents, and usually that was
Right,
me.
like youth productions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think it was my junior year of high school. I auditioned for a production of The Crucible, and I got cast as Mary Warren, who's this like fragile little tulip, I guess. I don't know how to yeah. And we had adults in adult roles, and I was like, I just learned so much from like watching them on stage and watching them in the process. Dogs.
Hey, friends.
But yeah, it was super eye-opening because I was like, oh, this could be me in the future. Like I could be doing this. So it just made it like super real. And it was really exciting to like actually get to work with real professionals.
Yeah. And then when did voiceover start coming into play?
It it was such a weird coincidence, honestly. I want to say it was like junior or senior year. No, it was like right after I graduated college. There was this, I don't think they do it anymore, but there's this thing called the Column Online here in DFW, and they used to send out weekly e-blasts with like upcoming auditions, and most of it was theater stuff. But then one time, Funimation at the time put out like a casting call in this e-newsletter, and I was like, well, I've never done voiceover before, but I like acting and I like auditioning. So I sure. So I like sent an email and booked like a time slot. So I show up the day of, and I have no idea what to expect. And they were like, here's two binders. One is for female voices and one is for male. And you just pick up whichever one you want and then choose three. And I was like, how do I choose? Okay. So I don't even remember what I picked. But I went in and like read them, and I was like, okay. And you know, in the theater world, if you don't hear anything within like 2 weeks, then you didn't book it. So I assumed it was the same thing because I didn't hear anything for like at least 6 months. And then out of the blue one day, I got an email from Tara, and she was like, hey, can you come in and record Walla on this show called Showman Sample? And I was like, what's Walla? Like, I didn't even know. I was so, I had no idea. So I showed up, and at the time we were still doing like in-person sessions with just whoever. So I met three other awesome ladies that I had never met before, but had worked there and done some Walla. So I learned a lot just from being in the booth with them. And it was really fun. It was a really cool experience. But I didn't actually, I would get called in like sporadically every 6 months or so. There was no real consistency. And then in 2019, I took my first voiceover class with Felicia Angel up at Sunny Straight Studios in Denton.
Shout out to Felicia.
Yeah. And that was really what kind of got the ball rolling for me because I learned so much from her, and I took so many pages of notes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, actually, I kind of like this. And then I took another class with Kyle Phillips a few months later, and I recorded my first animation demo and like just got things rolling. And then 2020 happened, and it was like, hey, good timing because everything you know and love is going to shut down.
No, yeah.
And I was like, cool, well, I can still do voiceover. So it was a very fortuitous event.
It was like, I would say it's like almost perfect timing because you got into it right as things were shutting down. So you're like, okay, I'm going to keep going down this path.
Literally. I got so lucky. It was crazy how the timing worked out.
You just recently did your first musical in a long time. Can you talk about that experience and what that was like coming back to it?
It was so fun, dude. I haven't been in a musical since I had been in high school, so it's been at least 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Hello Dolly is like my favorite of all the classical musicals, like Sound of Music, whatever. Like, no, it's not my thing. But Hello Dolly, I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love the music, and I think Dolly is just such a snarky. She's just great. She's so
Yeah.
good. But I love the role of Minnie Faye because she's comedic relief, and I was like, I want to do this. So I auditioned back in April, May. I don't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so fun. And then I got cast. And so we performed in July.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so fun. I hadn't been able to like sing and dance like on any scale in the longest time. So it was just really freeing to like come back to my roots and be like, you can actually do this. I know it's been a
Mm-hmm.
long time, but you're not rusty.
Yes, that makes me so happy. It was so good. I saw it. It was a
You did.
freaking wonderful time. And so, do you have a favorite musical or play? But I want, if you have a favorite musical, do that one first and then play.
I love that. So the first musical that I ever saw, actually, well, not the first musical, but like the first one on a big scale was Wicked when I was in
Mm-hmm.
sixth grade. And so that one will always be a favorite for me for nostalgic reasons, because that's what
Absolutely.
I remember, just sobbing during Defying Gravity, because I had never
Mm-hmm.
heard anything like that before, and it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then in, I think it was 2013, Dallas Theater Center did a production of this new musical called Fly By Night.
Mm-hmm.
And it is now my favorite musical. It's life is not the things that you do, it's who you're doing them with. And that line has
Mm-hmm.
stuck with me forever. And it like changed the way that I live my life. And if a line in a musical could do that, that's like beyond what the writers could have ever hoped for.
Oh
But the
yeah.
music is beautiful, the storyline is beautiful, and I love it. It's so good.
And then, do you have a favorite play?
It's always such a tough question because I have so
I
many.
know.
I do love the Glass Menagerie. I know that's
Mm-hmm.
such like a basic answer, but I love that play. And
Basic answers
then
are basic for a reason. Like, they're very good. Lots of people
yeah,
choose them because they're very good.
yeah. But then if I had to choose like a favorite Shakespeare, it would probably be The Tempest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's just so much to unwrap about those characters, and so much that you can bring to the table in the silences that isn't written. And I just like the opportunity to be able to bring something new to the character that Shakespeare might not have actually mentioned in the script. It's really neat.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, dude. And then, do you have a theatrical dream role, musical or play or Shakespeare or anything?
Oh my gosh. I would love to be Miriam in Fly By Night. I can
Mm-hmm.
say that. Um, and then I still am waiting for the day that I can play Juliet and Romeo and Juliet before I get too old. I'm just waiting, dude. I'm like slowly making my way through all of Shakespeare's like strong female roles. Also Beatrice in Much Ado. That would be amazing.
Yes. Oh man.
I
The
freaking
minute
love it.
that happens, you have to let me know because I
Oh, I
have to
will.
go
I'll be
see
like,
it.
you'll be there with bells on. My biggest fan.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh man, wow, what a good show. Um, would you mind talking about your relationship or the relationship for you with performing and mental health and your journey with that, especially surrounding like your post-graduation journey?
Yeah. So high school, for so many people is a really rough time because you don't really know who you are, but you want to make a good impression on other people. And sophomore year, I went through a really dark time, and it kind of culminated in some not so great stuff for me. But my parents found me, and I got the help that I needed, and was put on medication to fix the chemical imbalance in my brain that I didn't even know I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got some therapy, and it changed my life in the best way, because it's entirely possible I wouldn't be here now without it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I went through that, and then when I graduated high school and went to college, um, it was just such a weird, it kind of like relearning who you are and what you want out of life, because suddenly you have to make
Absolutely.
all these big adult decisions without your parents there. So weird. But we made it through, and I graduated, and then I was booking a lot of work as soon as I graduated college, pretty consistently in theater, and that felt really, really good. But I was saying yes to every project that came along and auditioning for every project that came along, even if I didn't necessarily connect with it, because I felt like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I had to do.
Right.
Because the grind culture is so real.
Yep.
Um,
Golly gee, yes.
it's so real. So about a year and a half after I graduated, I just found myself super burned out. because I had been taking on every gig that came my way. And I was like, you need to take a break for a minute, because then I stopped getting cast. And I couldn't figure out why, but it made me really, really bitter and kind of jaded. And then I would bring that energy into the audition room with me. And it's like, well, no wonder you're not booking, because you're giving off weird vibes.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be around that. But it took a lot of soul searching for me to realize that that was the problem. So I think taking a step back from theater and from auditioning really gave me the opportunity to look inside myself and be like, hey, what's eating at your heart? Like, why are you like this? And then I learned, like, you don't have to say yes to everything. You can be selective. It's not going to hurt your reputation to say no to something, because they'll keep you in mind for something in the future. And that's still sometimes really, really hard for me to think about and to do.
Absolutely.
But I'm trying, and I'm like trying to help other people realize that they can also say no to things.
Yeah.
But yeah, taking that break, that hiatus, and finding other things to pursue in the meantime was really helpful.
Was there one performance through like everything that has really stuck with you, that you really feel like this, if I could pick one thing that I did that I really feel like this was me, and that was the most me I've ever been, and I really think that represents what I do best, which would you say that's for?
Oh man. So in March, I had the opportunity to play Ophelia in Hamlet. And that was
I saw it.
Again, you're my best friend. That was it was such a difficult process, because we were still in COVID, and we were like kind of going into another wave / coming out of a wave. And there was just so much going on at the time that it was a very complicated process, but we made it through. And I'll never forget, we were working on the Get Thee to a Nunnery scene. And the assistant director, Jewel, said something about that scene that, like, the light bulb went off for me. And she was like, so many people, have a tendency to overplay this. But the thing is, it's just a really, really bad breakup. And I was like, my God, she's right. Like, I don't know why I had never thought of it in that way before, but putting it in such simple human terms really helped me, like, ground the performance and, like, you just remember, like, a bad breakup that I had. And I was like,
right.
Yes, suddenly this is not Shakespeare's text. This is me, and I am living in it. And so it was just me living my truth. And that scene, every single night, me and Leroy, he played my Hamlet, and we've known each other for 10 years now. So getting to play opposite him in that scene was huge, because it was like, we have a history already as friends. And now we get to bring that to this performance, in addition to all these other emotions that we're feeling. And so there was just complete trust in one another. And every single performance, we ended up crying, because it was so genuine and so real. And I don't know that I've ever had another experience like that on stage. It was so cool.
Yeah, holy moly, that's amazing. I could say it. I saw it, and it was very, very good.
Thanks, buddy.
I know that that's not fruitful language at all. I am very much like, I'm not selling it as much as it should be sold, because I can't even think of the words. It was insane. It's so good. I wish everybody could have seen it everywhere. What the heck? Okay, taking a step down, we're more silly, more fun. If you could cast any of the characters in anime that you have played in a musical or play, who would you choose, and who would they be? And now you have more to choose from last time.
I know. I think, oh man, part of me is like, I need to pull up a resume. What's going on here?
I mean, we can cut as much as we need to shorten it if you want.
That's hilarious. I do feel like when I was, what was that, sophomore year of high school, we did Romeo and Juliet, and I played Lady Capulet. And the girl that played Juliet was a senior, which was so terrifying to me, because I was like, I have to be your mom. But I think that Konishi from The World Ends With You would be like a real scary Lady Capulet. And it would be really, really interesting, because you would see that power dynamic at play. I'm totally about to bring up my own, because I'm like,
no, do it.
I'm like, what have I played?
Who am I? I don't remember.
Oh, okay. I could totally see. We did this like fully realized but virtual production of Leading Ladies by Ken Ludwig. And I love that play. I think it's hilarious. And I played Meg, and she's very much like kind of a tsundere, but a little more goofy and maybe not as mad. So I think that Hana from Aoshi would actually be a good match for that.
Yeah, yeah.
She's goofy, but then she can flip on a dime too. And so it'd be really, really cute to like see her do that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Man. And I'm trying
Okay.
to think. I feel like Aiko could I don't know who she would be. Someone who gets mad all the time. Oh, she could be Mary Bennett. She could totally be Mary Bennett.
Oh my gosh.
Because she's a like top of her class, super smart, and like always has like a witty comeback, but is also kind of quiet.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, circling back to you saying that The Tempest is your favorite Shakespeare, can you talk a little bit about the piece you chose to perform?
Yes. So it's a piece as Miranda from The Tempest. And she's such an interesting character because the way that she's written leaves a lot for the actor to kind of come up with and fill in. So I think she's written pretty like straight-laced and kind of like your typical ingenue. But of course, when I read it, I'm like, oh, I can make this funny, or I can be sassy here, or, you know, imbue aspects of the line with parts of me and who I am. So I kind of used the piece to be like really quirky because she's not used to speaking to men. Like she has her dad, and then this is literally like the first man she's ever seen. So naturally she's like, I'm in love, you know, as one does. So I was able to like really think about that and be like, okay, so what is her mindset here? She thinks she's in love. She wants to make a good impression, but she doesn't know how. And she's she has no filter because she's never needed one before. She's never been in society. So her thoughts come out verbally because she doesn't have a filter. And I just playing with that and thinking about like, she says something and then it's immediately like, oh God, what have I said? Playing with that is so fun and so funny and so honest. And I didn't want to like play the bits. I wanted to play the honesty of it. And then if that is funny, then I've succeeded.
Exactly. Well, enough talk. Let's watch it together.
I do not know one of my sex. No woman's face remember, save from my glass mine own. Nor have I seen more that I may call men than you, good friend, and my dear father. How features are abroad I am skilless of. But by my modesty, the jewel in my dower, I would not wish any companion in the world but you. Nor can imagination form a shape besides yourself to like of, but I prattle something too wildly, and my father's precepts I therein do forget. Hence, bashful cunning, and prompt me plain and holy innocence. I am your wife, if you will marry me. If not, I'll die your maid. To be your fellow you may deny me, but I'll be your servant, whether you will or no.
Thank you so much again to Marisa for such a fun conversation and such a lovely performance of some beautiful Shakespeare. Be sure to follow Marisa on their social media. I've got some links down in the description for you. There's also a link to the playlist of all the other episodes of the Shonen Showtunes virtual interview series, so please check that out if you're interested. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon.
It is a wonderful my life. Please could you get